In order to understand the impact of gentrification in Washington, D.C., we need to first look at the significance of D.C. to those residents who have been displaced. Washington, D.C. has always played a vital role in African American history. In fact, it was the first city to prohibit slavery in the United States. And that as D.C. continued to be at the forefront of change for African American rights, this propelled for a large migration of African Americans into the district. According to Murray and Nez McQuitter, the project director for the African American Heritage Trail, during the Civil War and Reconstruction era, more than 25,000 African Americans moved to Washington, and by 1975, African Americans were politically and culturally leading the city with more than 70% of the population. However, what was once known as Chocolate City, Washington, D.C., is now known for enduring the highest intensity of gentrification America has seen so far. According to Oxford Dictionary, gentrification is defined as the process of renovating and improving a house or district so that it conforms to middle class taste. Yet it is not as simple as it seems, as according to the D.C. Policy Center, in the 1970 census, 71.1% of D.C. identified as Black, and as of 2015, it has declined dramatically of over 20%, as of 48% of D.C.'s residents consider themselves Black. These are not just simply people moving out of their homes out of their own desire. Gentrification, however, is the forceful displacement of long-standing residents from predominantly low-income African American communities due to the staggering increase in rent and property taxes. While gentrification usually results in lower crime rates, better public school systems, and cleaner public facilities, this is not beneficial for those long-standing community members. Oftentimes, people falsely coin the term gentrification as revitalization, but those two are not the same. The difference between gentrification and revitalization is that the revitalization neighborhoods improve while remaining affordable for those long-standing low-income communities. While gentrification raises rent and property values by undergoing a meticulous course of action, as real estate developers extract money from those low-income neighborhoods and monopolize from it, while all ultimately being facilitated by the government. Within D.C., there is a neighborhood known as Berry Farm, who is amongst those neighborhoods who have been hit the hardest from gentrification. In the year 1867, the United States government bought Berry Farm, a 375-acre site inside the Anacostia, for the settlement of African Americans following the Civil War. During 1941, the government took a 34-acre section of this for the construction of a public housing development for African Americans. This development was planned to enhance community engagement, and it ultimately led to a vital role of activism within the civil rights movement. Berry Farm's residents also assisted in the desegregation of D.C. public schools and also helped found the National Welfare Rights Organization, and it was also pivotal for the go-go scene in D.C. Gentrification has forced most and nearly all of Berry Farm residents to be displaced as developers are planning to build luxury apartments there. But this fight was not over for them. According to NPR, former residents of the Berry Farm housing complex in Southeast have been pushing for months to get a historic designation, which they say will allow them to preserve some of the community's history and perhaps exercise some control over the plans for its redevelopment. Now the D.C. Historic Preservation Review Board has voted to designate a portion of the site as a historical landmark. Just imagine someone ripping you away from your home just because they felt like it and just because they could. This is what gentrification is doing to millions of lives, not just in D.C., but around the globe. And although we can never truly end or eliminate the racism embedded within this nation, which is one of the main culprits of targeting African American communities for gentrification, we can urge the government to implement policies to help protect residents and their homes.